Okay, so I'm going to be talking a bit about the formal proceedings in getting internships or experiences in commercial law. As a first-year law student, and there's not like in banks, for instance, almost all banks do what's called spring weeks. They focus more on open days or 2 or 3 days insight days, which normally you apply through the webpage, as Dick's already mentioned. A few firms offer weeks, which is the same thing, again, an insight into the firm. It's quite brief and it's more focused on giving presentations and workshops rather than actually getting to do the type of work that you would do, for instance, an internship in your second year. In your penultimate year, you will do something called vacation schemes. They're normally 1 to 3 weeks long. You do them either Christmas, Easter, or summer holidays. You can do more than one. A lot of people do 3 or 4 a year, although it doesn't really make a difference in terms of just getting a broad overview of different firms. That's a good thing about commercial law, whereas in banking we have to do 10 weeks. At the back of such vacation schemes, you often end up with an interview for a training contract, which is really what you're looking for. These can also be applied to directly when you're a finalist. It depends on whether you're a law or non-law student. The different firms recruit at different times depending on what type of a degree you're reading for. After graduation, you do either the DDL, which stands for Graduate Diploma in Law. That's for students who haven't read law at university. It's a 9-month course that, if you already have a training contract, will be paid for by the firm. If you've already done the DDL, or if you're a law student, you will do what's called the LPC, which is the Legal Practice course. That's a 7 or 9-month course, again, paid for by the firm if you already have a training contract. Well, not all firms offer to pay for them, but most of the big city law firms do. When you've finished your education, you'll be a trainee for 2 years, which is what people normally refer to as a training contract. During your training contract, you will typically sit in different departments. So a law firm is split into different departments, or it's also called practice areas. And I think you normally do at least 6 seats. So you'll just spend, for instance, 4 months in one, or 6 months, or 3 months, depending again on which firm you're at, which kind of give you, a broad overview of what the firm does. And then after the 2 years, you have to decide which seat or which department you want to qualify into. Then you become an associate. So let's say you become an associate in the real estate practice area or department. You'll be an associate for approximately 10 to 12 years, and then hopefully you'll make partner, which is you become essentially a formal owner of the firm. So it's the highest kind of level that you'll get at as a lawyer. As for the recruitment process, for the vacation schemes or open days, as you will do as a student, it normally involves an online form. Law firms typically do not ask, or at least the big city ones, do not typically ask for CV. Rather, they have a box where you fill in all your work experience that ask very specific questions around them. And then you'll also have your application questions, which are normally centred around why you want to do commercial law, why you want to work at that particular firm, what you think you'll get out of that particular experience, and also commercial awareness, which is often phrased in a way of asking you to describe a recent news article and why you found it interesting. It also focuses a lot on your skills, so they will be typically looking at a question, why do you think you will become, or why do you think you will make a good commercial lawyer? So essentially backing up, again, why you want to do law and why you would be suited. Some firms make you do tests. Law firms normally use what's called the verbal reasoning test, where you're given a chunk of text and have to draw certain inferences from it. There's also the logical reasoning test, or some firms use what's called Watson Glaser, which focus more on the way your mind works. Some firms use situational judgment tests, where you will be given this basic test where they give you a certain situation, then you have to reply or pick an answer of how you would react in that particular situation. Once you pass the tests, if they have any, there will be normally interviews. Some firms even add in the phone interview before the actual interview, which can take the form of them calling you up and you have a conversation. But some firms also do video interviews where they ask you a question and you have a set amount of minutes or seconds to answer it in front of the screen. It can be in different forms, but that's normally what will happen. Then you'll have an interview in person. These can involve anything from only a competency interview that focuses on your skills and what you've done previously. Some also add in case study interviews, where they will give you a case study and then just ask you questions on it. Some will have group exercises, some will have negotiation exercises. It will vary from firm to firm, but they all normally centre around one that focuses on teamwork and one that focuses more on you and one that focuses on the commercial case study. That's all that you have to expect when you want to go into commercial law. I mentioned that the final interviews for your training contract normally take place at the end of a vacation scheme, if that's what you've done. As mentioned, not all firms have the same process, so it's difficult to generalise, but all the things I mentioned is what you can expect to kind of have to do when you want to become a commercial lawyer.